talked about this over and over and over again. Anybody have any thoughts of the final version?
Yeah, I'll just add what I know. So this policy was updated. There were some outdated items that were on the previous policy, and then some protections that were put in there for individual board members, so that there can't be any, whether it be board members or staff members, there shouldn't be. There's language in there that essentially says that there shouldn't be any individual attacks or on individual staff members or individual board members. The other thing that's in there is it goes through what can be talked about during public comment, and then it also gave some guidelines as far as time limits. Outside of that, it's a pretty simple policy changes. And again, these were recommendations by PSBA. Any comments, questions?
Yeah, none. All right, well then that will be the first reading on the regular board meeting tonight. The non-agenda items, the 24-25 staffing recommendation discussion.
I'm gonna pass it on to Wade, because Wade has brought with him some data that shares just some of the different options that he has as proposed options for the high school and staffing. We had been talking about our dean. We had been talking about social studies. So Wade, go ahead and share with us the options you have.
Thank you, Mr. Zawarczyk, and thank you, Dr. Shaper, for the opportunity to talk about this evening, and thank you everyone for listening for a few minutes. At our last meeting, I talked about senior high scheduling, that we were in the preliminary stages of putting numbers together, and given the comments, some of the comments were made, went back, and we go through scheduling and the numbers. So we continue to work with this. Sometimes it's very much an ebb and flow process. And what I'd like us to be able to do is take a 10,000-foot view first of scheduling at the senior high school. We have a very comprehensive program. We have not only graduation requirements, but we have a lot of breadth and depth of our electives. And those electives, a lot of those are capstone programming, meaning the students start out in 9th grade, they go through whatever electives, and by the end, they have chosen to take something which really aligns with their career or college readiness, as well as just a high level of interest. We also feel that our programming puts students in a very competitive place when they leave high school, whether it is college, career, or called life ready. We also feel that our programming provides a lot of connectivity to school. Yes, the students know that there are graduation requirements they have to fulfill, but we also know that there are students that really look forward to coming to school because of a lot of the electives programming that we offer. One of the things, I guess, with having the opportunity to take students to that level is that within the secondary school, scheduling is done by certification. Whereas in the elementary, you can check the board positions, but in the secondary, it is by certifications. And oftentimes, your programming is determined by the number of people you have, and then how you want to develop that program. When you have an adequate number of individuals, then you can have multiple offerings. When you get down to singletons and you're doing scheduling, then you start getting into a lot more scheduling conflicts. Because, and I understand we all have to choose, but sometimes for a student to choose between two singletons, those may be offerings or those may be classes or courses that really are aligned with their interest. The other thing is that in the year 21-22, school year 21-22, to increase efficiency, we went to the place where we could say, you know what, senior high teachers can teach instead of 6, they can teach 7 periods. We can schedule them for as many as 7 periods. Well, looking at our schedule this year, working with Mr. Heinrich, we see that I think it was 17 teachers at the senior high have 7 instructional periods. We could only schedule 17 because there's almost 30 periods where there are other things that teachers do within that 7 periods. To name some of those, GIEP periods, there are 6. Career readiness, there are 2. Career seminar, there's 1. Ambassador seminar, 1. Leadership seminar, 1. Ideal coordinator, which has 5 for ideal program. We have a teacher who's part-time social studies, but also part-time ideal coordinator. And then we have a PBIS coordinator, also that's a period within that teacher's 7. So I'd like to be able to say that all teachers are teaching 7 periods. What they do is they have contact more often than not with students for those 7 periods. However, there are initiatives and there are also mandates or requirements that we have to fit a period within their schedule, such as GIEP. He said, well, what about the other periods? The other periods would be planning, which would be 8, and then lunch would be 9. And then we have the common planning, which is only a half hour. It's not a common planning, sorry, a common period at the end of the day, that 10th period, where we do interventions, we do the CCER class, we do clubs. We also have like a academic advisor where the teachers, one day we go over the grades with students, assignments, projects, et cetera, or convey grade level information to the students. So all 10 periods are spoken. Now, on top of that, we have to fit in the schedule 22 or so periods. We have a 9th grade study hall, which doubles out as in-school suspension. And then we have upperclassmen study halls. So there's 19 right there. Then we have to have minimally 3 teachers on cafeteria duty, 1 teacher per period with stand, and sometimes 1 to 2 paras, depending on the need. So you have 17 individuals who are booked with 7 class periods. And then you have about 30 who have 6 instructional periods, but then have a coordinator or a GIEP or something else. So that accounts for their 7. So you're 17, 37, 47. We have approximately 60 faculty. That includes counselors, nurses, et cetera. So we're probably closer to 55. That we have to fit in the 22 periods. We have to go into any department where the load is not an average of 7.4. So we can fit those things in there. So we work that out. So I just want to talk about efficiency when it comes to like we're pretty efficient in that regard. So if you would, how about taking a look at the packet I gave you? And if I could just very quickly go across the row at the top and tell you what each of those columns mean. Some of them are very self-explanatory, like course number. And then the academic level is a general education. Is it for enrichment or accelerated, or is it for students who are lower level of learning, at risk, struggling? So what you see here, the next column, number of student requests. The counselors started in January, February, introducing programming to the students. Then they give them what they're called their scheduling sheets. And they go down through there, and the students will choose a schedule where they'll have 7, including study hall. Sometimes more, because some students, they'll double up with a science lab course. And then they take those requests, they meet with the students, then they input them into the computer. So that's where those number of requests come. The one you're looking at right now is a social studies one. Social studies is a graduation credit. Students have to have 4 years of social studies. So you look at that next column, you see NSR, and it simply means number of student requests. And what I have done throughout the years is learned that we run about 80-85% scheduling efficiency. Higher if there's more offerings, and lower if there's fewer offerings. But for the most part, run about 85%. I know that a student, when they fill out their schedule, is going to get 85% of their requests request honored most times. The bulk of that 85% will be their graduation requirements, the English, the science, the social studies, and math. The other part are the electives. Now, electives in themselves serve as a graduation requirement. You have to have 7.5 electives by the time they graduate from school. Within that 7.5 electives, there's also, we have computer applications. We have the career and work readiness class, which are part of their graduation requirements. Then they get to choose other electives, and more often than not, they'll pick a path. We have what I call successive electives, maybe like a world language, maybe like a music class, maybe like digital media production, where there's level 1, 2, 3, and so on. And then there are random electives, high interest, that they take just for exploration. So when you look at that column, I know from American World 2 down through AP Government, Politics, College and High School, those classes satisfy the graduation requirements. In any combination thereof, sometimes grade level, sometimes they can choose to advance or accelerate through AP. I know that 100% of those requests are going to be honored because it's a graduation requirement. Furthermore, when you're working in private school, you set a load percent, or you set a load priority. Well, social studies and English get the highest load priority because you have to have 4 years of it. Then from human geography to U.S. presidents, those are the electives that we offer. The elections in U.S. presidents, those are rotating electives. Each year, social studies department will offer a different rotating elective for that group. This year, or for the next year, it's going to be elections and U.S. presidents. The other years can include world religions. They can include assassinations, and also include history of organized crime, which are highly popular with the students. Then below that, those are the things, for instance, like academic CCR advisor. That occurs during 10th period. Now, each section is only worth 0.4 because they have contact with students during all of those days, but CCR is 1 day, and the academic advisor is 1 day of contact with the kids to find out grades, finish assignments, etc. So I only equate that as 0.4. It's not like a whole section. SGA is by one of our teachers, and that typically and historically got a period so they could perform all the SGA duties. However, because we have been consolidating and absorbing, that person who does SGA will also have /study hall. So they have SGA and study hall at the same time because those SGA students can come down during that study hall and meet with our SGA advisor to do that work. Ideal, you see it's supplementary. We've had to remove, when I say remove those ideal offerings, what I mean is at one time, if there was a history teacher, or social studies teacher who had ideal, if I could put the period into their schedule, then there wasn't a supplemental pay for that. But because we're running so tight, I had to make this supplemental. Ambassador Seminar, that is an initiative that was started a few years ago. It is a very important one to our school. Anytime there's a new student who moves in, one of our social studies teachers serves as that advisor for them, and they align grade level students with those students. It's a really good service for students moving into the district. They keep a count outside the office. I forget what it's at right now, maybe 70 some students, new students who moved in. And those students work and then they plan activities, like an orientation for whenever they get a student. The 9th grade coordinator, that was running during 10th period. So it wasn't like within instructional load, but it does run 4 days a week. And that teacher does have contact with the students. The 9th grade coordinator position is one that we feel that's very important. And if you look at senior high programming, more often than not, you'll have some type of transition program for freshmen who come into the senior high school. And they do the activities. At least once a quarter, they have like a check and connect. They take the ambassador students and then they meet with all the 9th graders, find out what's going on, how they're doing, if you have any questions, they provide that service. Now, If you look further down, you'll see this first page that you were looking at. How we start out at each year and say, okay, what did we offer last year? What would it look like if we were to offer it this year? There may be a change in the class or so. For instance, if you look at that elections and U.S. presidents, that's a rotating elective. We didn't have it last year. Last year we had history of organized crime. So I included in that far column on the right, those are the averages per class. It lets me see what are the trends, what's going on with that class. So you'll see that those were asterisk elections. The next year is running first semester and U.S. president's running second semester. We have both semester offerings of history of organized crime, first and second semester. That just happens to be the averages for both first and second semester. So we're looking at, hey, if we tried to offer the things that we do in the manner that we do, it came to 7.91. Efficiency's sake, they can't have more than 7.4. So I already have to go in and find 0.51 to reduce that average. So that's something we would do anyway, we have going into it. But when you look at it, you have Melissa Nyberg, and each year we set out with, the goal was for her to have a maximum of 2 social studies classes and 5 periods as an ideal coordinator because of how much ideal has grown. Well, that may be something where Ms. Nyberg would have to have an additional section of social studies, and that takes away from our ideal coordinator responsibilities. Nate Morton currently is a science teacher who is dual certified, but we had to take periods out of science so we could make him teach the social studies. So that is a listing of all the personnel and a breakdown. And I used increments, 1/7 to get those decimals. So with that, that's the first look at social studies. So like I said, listening to what we talked about before in the last meeting, saying, hey, look, this is where we are. I've gone back and tried to work these more, trying to make it more efficient. So if you can return the page. This would be, if we didn't hire anybody, I had to go from 7.91 down to as close as I could to 7.4. What you see in the yellow is the changes that I was able to make. For instance, American World 2 went from 9 down to 8, increased the class size to 27. It is unlike in an elementary school where you spread the sections out and you know exactly, by average, how many students will be in. What you could end up with is classes that may have 33 in one and maybe 23 in another. But you start with the average to figure out the projections. So if you compare those, you will see that I reduced the number of sections. As a result, it increases the number of students in those classes. Now, when it comes to students in classes and scheduling, there's going to be some give and take. For instance, we're going to have to make allowance. That's usually when I did this originally for student failures. Those students who were repeated may not take it to summer school, but I have to have room for them if they repeat the class. Also, new enrollments I talked about over the summer. Yes, some students will move away, but it seems we get a higher percentage of new enrollees than we do of the students who move away. Also, schedule changes. And it leads into the next thing. There are going to be students who will be doing dual enrollment. And we don't know whether that class is being offered afternoon, morning, or whatnot, but we have to be able to run our schedule because as soon as you start constricting, say this class has to be offered during this time, then what you do is you put an artificial restraint in there. Right now, there are some restraints in our system, but Power School will put classes in place where there are the fewest number of scheduling conflicts. That translates into a higher scheduling efficiency for us. So I am confident that some of these students, well, we had 100 or so that went to the dual enrollment meeting, junior, seniors. We set up a schedule. I know some of those are going to come out. Like I said, that gets balanced with failures and bullies. I don't know what the exact number is. I don't know how many students are definitely going to commit to dual enrollment. But we have to put a schedule together because a number of those students decide not to do a dual enrollment. They have to have a class, somewhere in which to go without ballooning the classes higher. Also, I know a number of these students are going to transfer to ideal throughout the year. There are some students you'll see already have scheduled ideal classes, but throughout the school year, for whatever reason, there will be students who will decide to go online. So there's going to be some give and take there. And from doing this, that's why you look at that first page, you say, well, there could be more in there. Instead of 24 average, you could have 30 in there. You could. But if we start out like that, and then we don't have the room in which to put the students, that creates some challenges. So looking at the second page again, this is what it would look like if we didn't hire anybody. You get the number down to 7.4. Those are the things that I've been able to do to get it closer. But as you see, it increases those numbers. Now, the upside of it, I guess, is that when you offer fewer sections, is that you will have fewer students overall going into it. So you're going to lose some of those requests. But those students will have to go schedule elsewhere into something else. So trying to find that soft spot or that balance, they can do that. The last page is if there was no hiring, like the second one, there's no hiring, how do we do it and have a dean of students? So I went in and we worked all those numbers. I had to do is increase NIBRA by one section, the one period of social studies, and was able to get Burdig down to, he would be available for 4 periods for dean of students. But it still keeps Nate Wharton in the mix. As a science teacher, that puts strain on the science department not being able to use him in the area which he's primarily certified.
How many periods does Nate in social studies teach?
Nate currently has 3 periods, same thing, 0.429. And then he would have 4 periods of science. He teaches environmental science, and he also teaches first and second senior science, astronomy and geology. One semester, the other's the next semester. That gets it down around 7.4. And again, this is still very much an ebb and flow process, because when you go down through scheduling, we might see, okay, during the second period, no matter how many times we shake the shuffle schedule, that we just need an added section during second period when there isn't a American Goal 2 being offered. We have to put one in there because it will pull in students. Those are some of the things when doing scheduling that are helpful, but as you see, we're really tight in social studies, and as a role, I hate to start out by projecting 30, because that's 30 average. I know that there will be, some will go 36, and some will be down like 22, just because of the way their schedules completed. With the electives, again, if you reduce the number of sections, then you reduce the chances that all of those students will get that. And besides, electives, like I said, are running 85%. Now, last year, we had 94% scheduling efficiency, which was outstanding. But there was trade-offs with that. The trade-off was, well, to get 94% of the student schedule requests honored, then that meant a large study hall during first period. But that's something that's a trade-off you accept, because I could say, you know what, 94% of those kids got their schedule satisfied. So we had to have a large study hall. That's not ideal either, but that's what, that's what one of the trade-offs would be. So in social studies, it's like, they talk about, water balloon, you push it on one side, it bulges on the other. That's kind of where we're with social studies right now. In fact, we're overprescribed if we run it, like the offerings and programs we have. The other thing I would say is that, social studies is a tested area for the civics test. And try to watch that. We have an average of 23. And I would say this, when I was a teacher of economics, I remember Mr. Duffy, who was the assistant principal, came knocking on my door. He says, Wade, it's like my second or third year of teaching. He said, fourth year of teaching. He said to me, I need to have a class with 36 seniors in it. What are your thoughts? And I knew the schedule was made. You just can't undo it. Because every one of those students has a different variation of where classes are placed. And I said, well, if that's what you need, that's what we got to do. So I had a class of 36. Well, at that time, the push was writing across the curriculum, portfolios, things of that nature. And I will tell you, with that many students in there, I couldn't do that anymore. I had my assessments were more objective. I had to switch to, multiple choice, less writing. Did it, I got the job done. I was efficient. But I was not as effective if there had been fewer students in that classroom. So that is where we are, and we'll continue to work the numbers. And I would tell you that, having an additional social studies person will be able to put Nate back into science. We'll be able to pick up the classes that Michael Birdie would not teach if he became dean of students.
So Wade, why are we doing anthropology with only 7 students?
We wouldn't. I said, I don't know if you were here at the beginning. This is the first run through. Anytime there's a class with fewer than 8 requests, we don't run it, unless it's like a first time offering that class until it builds interest. So that would be one. If you would go to, when you stay on the first page, we would just reduce that to 0. It would take that goes from 7.91 to like 7.84, but it's still above that 7.4 number.
And then on the human geography, you're at 14.
There's only one section of it.
I know, but again, my question is, and I'm thinking about this as much from the perspective of the $4 million bogey that we're trying to hit. And, at that point, is that something that we just don't offer, or that we don't offer it this go round?
It becomes, right now there are that many requests for it. Maybe some of those don't get honored. Maybe within the schedule changing, the schedule changes that do occur, it becomes a viable alternative for a kid. It becomes a viable alternative for the new kids who move in. It could be some of those kids are dual enrolled, they won't be in that class. There's a give and take that goes with those classes. Now, could say we won't offer that, but that might be something which is of high interest to the kid, that's meaningful for whatever direction they're in school. So balance that by maybe raising the numbers of kids in other electives by decreasing the sections so we can offer it.
So I like what you did with a lot of these, particularly on page 3. I think you're certainly headed the right direction by reducing some of the sections and, letting the class size, increase a little bit. And again, the next question I would have is, why wouldn't we do sort of the same thing with AP history? And even if that's too many to do one section of, maybe not everybody gets that AP history elective.
Yeah, I mean, we looked at that. In fact, we had a conversation on that today. For instance, American World II, that's a ninth grade class. It might make better sense to keep the numbers a little more down on that one because they're ninth graders and increase the AP 10th grade. I mean, those are things we can do, but the section number, the total will still be the same.
But in your AP history, you're showing two sections, if I'm reading this correctly.
Right.
And what I'm suggesting is maybe you just do one section and it's 30 kids and poor people just don't get that request.
And that's possible. It just, I guess we haven't crossed that threshold yet where we start out by saying 30 is the new metric.
Not for an AP class and not for a tested subject area. 30 students in any class is way too many.
On the third page, the ninth grade coordinator, why is the number of sections 0 from 0.8? How did that happen?
Good question, because we had to go through the schedule and we had to start reducing something and we figured reduce that to get it so that you're not 736 is workable. Anything more is above that, I know, it can't offer beyond 7.4. So we start with ninth grade coordinator because although it's important, the other things are important too.
Hmm.
You gotta do something somewhere.
A ninth grade coordinator, SGA ambassador, could those happen in 10th period, or how does that look in this schedule? Like the SGA person, is
That's a
that
good question. There are
part of
students-
his 7 periods you're saying he teaches?
What I'm saying is you have ambassador seminar, it runs the same time science seminar runs because there are students who are in both. So they will share those students. If I move them to 10th period, yes, would open up more time there. But those students may be dedicated to something else in 10th period. It's like if I separate ambassador seminar from science seminar, then if that student wants to be in both, now they have to put an extra period in their schedule. And also for the 10th period to work, we have a couple of things going on in 10th period. We have CCR, we have academic advising, we also have intervention. To keep the numbers low in intervention, that is increasing the numbers across the board with all the other teachers. So if I move them up in there,
What's that, Mom?
if I move them up into that, they're no longer grade level. They are a mixed grouping. And it just wouldn't be as effective, whereas if you kept them in the schedule, you had time to do that.
Yeah, I mean, just so the boards are, giving somebody a period like that in their day is probably a $13,000 expenditure.
I don't equate, if you average it,
It is.
it's 13,000. But
Oh, yeah.
I equate,
That's direct salary.
but I equate instruction to be worth a lot more than ninth grade coordinator. So I wouldn't equate it as 13,000. I would equate it as, less.
Teacher gets, a position costs us $130,000 and there's 10 periods, it's $13,000 of what that period is costing you.
Yeah, on average, you're right.
And then SGA would be the same thing, and they get extra duty, extra pay for SGA as well.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. The SGA, they do get extra pay, extra duty, but they need student contact. We thought about running SGA after school, but those are the students who are most often involved in so many other activities that they would not be available to me. So what we do, that SGA period, we run it, so that person, Michael Burdick, has both SGA and study hall and in-school suspension at the same time. So the students have a place to go and meet with him. So he's not waiting around for students to come. He has students.
Wade, I get your theoretical value of the teaching is more important or more valuable, I think is the way you expressed it, than than an SGA coordinator or ideal coordinator, whatever. But I think the issue that's, I think at least driving some of us is the difference in the budget and how do we crack that? Okay, and in which case, even though the value of the teaching may be greater, the numbers are the same. And
No, I understand that fully. You know, there's only so much pie to go around. And believe me, I get asked a lot because much of throughout the school year, you know, why can't we have another position? Because we have a budget deficit. What hurts is whenever I was selling the budget deficit last year, saying, guys, you know, we're at this place. And then we come in $500,000 over it, then I got egg on my face because
blame him.
Jared's doing his job. Right? You know?
Yes, he
I'll
did.
take that.
He's got to make sure there's a rainy day fund because stuff can happen. But
Well, I think the thing that's a challenge there, though, Wade, is that, you know, with the additional ESSERS funds that we got, that, you know, while we may have been, while we didn't have a deficit then, when all this ESSER money goes away, I think that's the message that I would tell people is, that we turned out, you know, in the black, but the chances of us that continuing without that additional ESSERS funding is not good.
well, I know it's extremely tough. I mean, we've been through this 11,
Every
12.
year.
No, I mean, we were in it a number of years ago, and we had to do something like this. And but I remember saying, hey, this is going to be tough. We got to get through it, and everybody pulled, and we did that, and we've done things on efficiency scale that really helped in that regard. But all I can say is that your social studies department at the senior high school is being stretched a lot. And I'm not saying that there isn't another way of doing this, but we have a program that was developed and designed last year with a member that we no longer have. So we're trying to put it together and make it work, being a down person.
Which we approved.
I mean, that was,
We approved the program that you brought to us for social studies. So
and
we
then,
need
you
to
know,
support it.
I talked about it earlier, saying that, you know, there are certain things that compound or challenge the schedule. And, you know, I mentioned some of those last time. I just know that I can't run what we have at 7.91. I got to get it down near 7.4. And that pretty much all but maybe one or two of the social studies teachers are running at 7 instructional periods, not 6 in a contact student. They're running at 7.
Is it possible to find a dean of students from another department and take dean of students out of social studies? You know,
You have to,
some department that isn't quite as stretched.
well, first, I think you'd have to find someone who's interested in doing that, pursue that track.
Right.
Well, I assume it's a great job.
And,
People just line up for it. Isn't that when you become a dean?
yeah,
Nope.
and, so yeah, there's always that possibility.
Well, that would get us 4 periods back, wouldn't it?
Does he have his principal cert?
I guess he does.
I would prefer it be somebody with a principal cert,
Yeah, we have
the secondary.
1, 2, including Michael, I think there's 4 individuals who have 5 recently have principal certification, and only one of them has expressed, well, there was another one expressed interest, but just can't make it work in that department. We're back to the same place. But 3 of those 5, when they earned it, they earned their certification, and they just made a career decision. They don't want to continue pursuing that any longer. But Michael has done that and wants to pursue it.
And he's expressed interest in being a principal someday, so it's a good experience for him.
He's proven himself very well as a dean of students. And that's,
One of the situations that I just do not like, and I voiced this, and it probably got back to you, Wade, is when a teacher has a study hall, and you mentioned this, that's why I'm bringing this up, a study hall and an in-school suspension at the same time. That is just a terrible situation. It's a terrible situation for the teacher who doesn't have any choice. Maybe they had choice, I don't know, I doubt it. And just the students that are in the in-school suspension who are visible to anyone. And I know why, when I look at these numbers and I know what you're balancing, I can see why. That's not something that is going to happen.
We were trying to say, how you say, allocated resources the best we could, because if someone
I
has
know.
only in-school, if there's no in-school plan that day, then that's a period, yes, I could do backup kinds of things, but that's just where we are. We've been reducing and reducing. Going back through it and looked at some numbers, the ninth grade, when I moved up to the high school in 2011-12, we had 71 and a half positions. We're currently running at 60 and a half, almost 60 and a half. So those 10 individuals, if you look at just if they taught 6 periods, that's 60 periods that are no longer in the schedule. And, you look at, Jared would probably be better at it than I would, just the savings that attributed. Now, it wasn't like, oh, these people were sitting around doing nothing. No, they were booked. But we also know economically where we are that we had to do that.
What was the class size, like the grade class size in 2011? Is it grossly different?
I think it was on a downward trend. That's why we brought the freshmen up at first. And I want to say that it has been around that 215 to 225 mark. This senior class runs 237. I think last year was maybe like 233 or something. So it's in between that 215 and 230 mark for the foreseeable future. But when we were grades 10 through 12, it went down to like 640, and there was room to bring the ninth graders on, and we did that. What we had at that time is we had 2 teachers from every course subject come up with the ninth graders. And through economies of scale, we were able to, work it out that we were able to absorb some of those. However, we're at that point where it's getting harder to absorb.
The only other question I have, just trying to wrap my head around the chart, which I like a lot, but the elections and U.S. president-elect is obviously very popular. Like those 24 kids that are not getting that class, like where are they going?
Which, are you looking at the third sheet?
Well, both sheets have the same numbers for the
Yes.
requests and then that's 14 for one, 10 for the other. Where do they go? Like
They have to reschedule, they have to choose other classes.
just pick something different.
But that's just not so easy when you say, cut a class that's 14 students. That, you can't just say, okay, they'll go somewhere else. You got to fit in the schedule, and it just is it's tough.
I guess, because the first sheet, I think I can answer this question in my head as I'm thinking it through, but you don't want to have, a starting average class size at around 30, and I understand why, because that's an average class size. You don't want it to bounce around, but you're losing 24 students with an average class size of 23 and 21, and then we bump that up essentially almost 10, on that third page to absorb the same number of kids and not drop them off. Why aren't we doing that now so those kids get the elective they want? I understand it puts the average up towards 30 and you don't want to start there, but that's the most glaring. Like, we're pretty efficient. You ask for it, you get it, except for those, rather popular ones.
The only students who wouldn't get it is because there's fewer offerings that something else pop up, maybe a music class or a world language class, that they're going to take that instead. It's still the same number of students, but the classes just got bigger. But I know that not all those students will schedule, just because there's fewer
You're right.
of them. So, we're gonna continue working this, and,
You said that you get 50 kids, or so more or less, coming into the high school every year?
about 50 over the summer, yeah.
So you start off with, say, 200 kids in a class and you end up with 225. Where are these kids coming from?
Locally, from other districts, they come from out of state. You know, family situations dictate that they're moving here.
IUP, they bring their families from out of the country even.
But it's the high school that we're not seeing, that we're not.
Well, we have some international students that have,
No, I understand that, but then 25 or 50 is a lot. That's a big chunk.
Yeah, we had
but it's
70
combined, like
2
you
years
said,
ago.
some local, some out of state,
We-
some out of the country.
I want to say that's the price of being good. Cost of being good is that
That's true.
when people move to this area, they want to come to. our
Yeah,
school
but they're coming to the senior high, they're not coming to the elementary schools, which is,
Oh, yeah, they are.
right now, we're running, all our elementary grades are in the 200 range. And somehow or other, they go from 200,
Well, you're also going to be pulling in St. Bernard's.
That's true. High school,
and then they come in,
Maybe season
and
basis.
they come in the junior high.
ninth grade.
They will come in ninth grade. Because we
Okay,
got a couple of students from Seeds of Faith this year
okay, so if St. Bernard's is running,
through eighth grade.
yeah, everybody up there's coming to your ninth grade. So that's probably a large
Let's say
chunk
good
of
season.
that number that is,
Yeah.
would happen. Okay, that makes sense.
And then we also have students moving out.
But it seems like the net is still, we end up
And that is higher.
graduating more kids than you'd expect.
So like I said, we'll keep working it. Appreciate your time and going over all this. We do this for each of our departments, you know. We strive for that efficiency of 7.4. And some departments are fewer, but they will be the ones that get the lion's share of the 22 periods that we have to wait until we run the schedule to put them in. Because of the study halls and in schools and the cafeteria. In other departments, there are coordinator initiatives, mandates that they're the seventh item within a teacher's load of 7.
Wait, I know it's not social studies, but when I looked through that information you sent out, one of what I thought was kind of an odd situation was you have the yearbook. I believe it's listed under BCIT, and yet the newspaper is in your English or your literature department or ELA. Why is that?
Well, in part, it deals with the individual who expressed interest to do that. That's
So the
not-
teacher that's going to be the mentor, teach that particular program.
Right, so in this instance, yearbook is a BCIT because that teacher expressed interest in doing that. Yearbook is one of those that can move to department. It's kind of like, in sort of the same way, in science, there's physics, chemistry, and biology. Those are 3 defined areas. They can only teach those classes. But environmental science is something that can be taught by any one of them. Same with like someone who expresses an interest in yearbook, they can teach yearbook. It can move around to departments.
Well, the reason I asked was when I looked at the newspaper, if I'm not mistaken, there were only 4 requests
4 or 5, that's right.
for the
For right now.
newspaper. And so again, it's not that I'm trying to do away with the newspaper, but and I think there was around 20 for the yearbook.
Yeah. Probably 26. There's
Okay.
24 computers in the room, in part. The other part is that having 26 or whatever the number is working simultaneously on the same things, there's a log jam occurs. So by having this too, it also provides opportunity for more students to go in there. And I can say, the early parts of scheduling, like when I get those and I go down through those numbers, I walk around to those teachers, like, the newspaper one right now has 5 in it. That's very low. So I said, we need to drum up some more support for this because we may not run it.
But my thought process was, is there not some way to run it, but combine it with like your book or some other, some other course, so that it's not totally eliminated, but at the same time, we go back to his argument of $13,000 for that particular period for 4 kids or 5 kids.
And, like I said, under 8, we don't run it. Now, the teacher who has it, this is to be her second year next year doing it. So she has an opportunity to go out and recruit for that, to build up those numbers. But yes, there is that opportunity to combine those. I don't know, and it might be more of a Jared question, but those are both supplemental positions. I don't know what that looks like to combine it. Does a person do both? Make that. But right now we have individuals who are interested and they do a nice job. I would, Pam just finished the yearbook. Did she tell me? The yearbook has almost 200 pages in it because of the amount of time and effort that goes into it.
Is your book put together in those classes during the day?
Yes, because it's a class for students.
What work happens outside of the normal day that they get extra duty, extra pay for?
All of the contacting with the company, she sets it up, like all the students go out to all the businesses. She sets that up where they go out and they fundraise for that.
She sets that up to happen outside the day, or she sets it up at the end of her day,
Yeah,
stays
like
late
this.
to do that?
There may be a period for it, but she's working on it beyond her period.
Contractual day.
Yes. Oh, yeah. It'd be interesting just to come tell her everything she does with it, because it's quite a involved job. Yeah, there's many times she's walking out the door, sometimes I'm walking. She's working on, there's yearbook deadlines that they have to complete.
I brought this up a couple of times in the past about the newspaper and how it's a little bit like shorthand. These kids should be learning about digital marketing and digitally doing this newspaper.
They are.
It should be on a much more frequent basis. It should not be run like a newspaper. It needs to change its focus. I haven't got much traction on that.
I'll have to look into that. I know they switched to online because there was
But it's still being
Not very much
published like
cost.
a paper. It's not being, one of the reasons that people aren't interested in it is because they're not interested in that technology and that pace. The pace now is the basketball game happened today, the story's posted tonight, and we're moving on. And that's not what the newspaper we currently have is doing.
and there might have to be some adaptation. This new person takes it
All
over.
the time.
And the former advisor made that transition to electronic. But I know that the teacher's doing it now. She's very committed to making it success. And I said, I went around at any others you saw, the numbers and said,
I don't think that solves any of these problems. Okay, but I would like to see where the students learn to work in that kind of pace and that kind of environment, and they publish material on a very high frequency basis. They do the editing, they do the photography of it. They make it sing and dance, and learn some of these techniques that the social media people are living at.
I understand. All right, so
I have one more question. This is changing the subject a little bit, but is there anything through AP that dictates class sizes?
I'm unaware of anything that
Okay.
dictates.
I wasn't sure.
I know we look class size on the low end of it, because like for this year, we didn't run AP physics or AP chemistry because the numbers were too low. But they've done much better. AP Chemistry, I think, has 17 requests right now for it, which is nice because 17, you're almost like switching out a section for a section. If you had, I don't know, 10, and then you're kind of adding into it.
And the kids have to test into AP. Do kids have to take a special test to test into AP classes? Or is it based on,
There are summer assignments that they
Summer
have to do. They have to show that they have the academic potential, capability. Mr. Doody is one of our AP teachers, also social studies department. Anything you want to add to that?
No, there aren't specific class size guidelines from College Board, but I think for most of us, in trying to prepare students for the AP exam, all of the AP exams include both multiple choice as well as a constructed response section. So that means doing a lot of writing practice with the students.
that's why I was hoping maybe they could set a limit.
As far
It
as I
couldn't
know,
go
they-
past a certain number
They
because that would
don't,
be
but I mean.
probably double the work of a regular class.
It does require lots of writing practice and lots of, and so therefore lots of assessing their writing and, trying to provide students with opportunities that are going to be preparing them for that AP exam experience. That's very different than teaching a general subject. So.
Wade,
Yes.
since Sue brought up about the AP courses, the AP Physics course, I assume that it's a calculus-based course. Okay.
AP Physics 2, I'm sorry. AP Physics 2 is running.
The retired physics teacher was our rifle coach, John Hartman. It came to a committee here several years ago and we kind of were talking about AP in general. And he said that it would be possible to combine the AP Physics with the AP Calculus course. Apparently, a lot of the course content is very much the same. Okay, and you're dealing at that AP level for both the physics and the calculus. And so that was something else I was looking at, with some of those numbers seemed down, and whether or not, if the physics was calculus based, whether or not those couldn't be combined into one section, because it would cover a lot of the same information.
I can talk to the instructors to see. I know that both curricula are very packed. But I don't know. I can't answer that. I'll check in.
If I could add on that, we're now required, since John retired, we are required to go through a process called AP audit with College Board. And one of the things that they require is evidence that the person teaching the class has the background, the competencies to be teaching that subject. So I'm not sure if they would allow us to call a class simultaneously AP Calculus and AP Physics. I mean, the AP part is their trademark. And then, the district admin team would have to look at that from a certification point of view, whether somebody physics certified can be teaching something for math credits, vice versa.
Well, it's my understanding, theoretically, that calculus was basically invented. Physics sort of forced the invention of calculus to deal with those higher level problems. So I would,
Walter, you're making my meeting run long.
Yeah, we have to go to executive session for 1 minute. I keep giving Jim the minutes here.
Thank everybody for your time.
We appreciate you. We
The
really do.
information is
For explaining.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So Dr. Schaefer, if you're okay with me taking the next item, I can make
Please.
this end by 6:30, I think.
There you
You
go.
got 37 seconds.
So, so the last item really is just you're okay with, so we have on the agenda, we had the PA code and we also had our district policy. The PA code pretty much says that we are going to keep track of all of these things, right? And then our policy says we're going to keep these records for 6 years. What we're asking for is just you're okay on, we do a lot of things that are kind of redundant. We do a lot of paper and pencil stuff, like we keep the files, and we have teachers that go down and initial all of those files, and they look at all this stuff, when all of those things are done electronically also. And so with this item, all we're asking for your okay on is for us to start looking at, if we have electronic records and we have backups for that electronic record, we're going to start taking away some of those paper pencil things. And I see Erin shaking her head because I think she knows some of the redundancies that
It's
happen.
not.
Until the EMP comes and we lose all our electronics.
Right. Right. So if you guys are okay with that, that's all we're asking with that third item. So I told you, well, 1 minute off.
I interrupted you. I did too. All right.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Do you remember when they made us